There was no warning to Sabalenka. Music. There was no interaction, no difficult conversation, and no moment when someone looked her in the eye and told her that things were getting better. One day, as the renewal discussions were going on, the music unexpectedly stopped. She was anticipating a call, but it never materialized. Furthermore, when it comes to music, there is no room for interpretation in the domain of premium brand connections. It is the answer. This story has very little to do with what happens on a tennis court. It all began with a single strategic decision taken in a boardroom by a Swiss watchmaker. Depending on your perspective, this may be the most brilliant long-term investment in sports marketing history or the most egregious betrayal of athletic quality in a generation. In any event, a lot has changed since then regarding music sponsorship of women's sports. To really understand the consequences of what has just happened. Since neglecting Sabalenka lessens the impact of the story, it is essential to comprehend her genuine identity. She grew proficient in more than just tennis. She evolved into a player that the sport produces maybe once in 15 years. Someone who is so intensely competitive, physically strong, and emotionally charged that opponents are not only trying to outsmart her tactically. They were trying to survive her in their minds. Before the end of 2024, she won the US Open and the Australian Open twice in a row. First place went to her. She was the most powerful female tennis player in the world, and almost everyone in the business world knew it. Portia is music, attracted the attention of international lifestyle corporations. After years of rigorous consistency, she had created the kind of profile that high-end businesses are supposed to desire. As a result, when renewal negotiations with a reputable Swiss watch manufacturer started, her team approached those discussions with a calm confidence, music, rather than arrogance, the kind that comes from having the titles, the numbers, and the cultural stamp to music back it. They believed that the deal was already final. Documentation was the only need. The temperature steadily shifted after that. At first, emails that had previously returned quickly started to come late, almost music, imperceptible. Friendly and cooperative conversations become systematic, painstakingly music, worded, and professionally distant. Anyone familiar with high-level business discussions would testify to the distinct atmosphere of shift. It is the sound a contract makes just before it expires. Nobody, however, made a clear comment. No one from the company sat down across the table and explained the circumstances. In other words, music ceased, the talk slowed, and ultimately stopped. The Sabalenka team was waiting. There was never any verification. Then, before they could fully understand the silence, the news abruptly became widely known, not only via their means in secret. The business continued to play tennis. They had found someone very different. An 18-year-old Manila resident called Alex Music. Where did you hear the name for the first time? Because the whole global commercial machinery of the professional sports business is now learning it by heart. Born in the Philippines, he trained at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Spain, one of the world's most difficult tennis academies. She became the first Filipino player to reach the Grand Slam main draw, music, at the age of 18. Music. This is not a footnote. That is historical fact. Furthermore, Southeast Asia did not respond with polite, measured applause when a talented player performed well in a tournament. It was more pure and louder than that. On its best day, social media in the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia, as well as front pages in Manila, radiated a feeling of national pride that no advertising campaign could have produced. Music. Millions of people were watching more than just a tennis match. They felt like they belonged there after seeing someone who looked like them enter one of the main athletic arenas. The Swiss company's research team had been methodically and covertly keeping an eye on everything for months. The structure of the arrangement is just as significant as its claimed $300 million value. This is not a straightforward endorsement agreement in which a business pays an athlete a certain sum to use their image in a campaign for a few years. Music. Industry experts who have researched the idea claim that endorsement fees are just the beginning of a much more complex, multi-layered deal that might span 8 to 10 years. Above that are regional campaign budgets aimed at Southeast Asian markets, co-designed product lines that directly benefit from Alex's creative input, charitable components related to Philippine educational initiatives, and performance bonuses based on career milestones anticipated throughout the agreement. In the traditional sense of the term, this is not a sponsorship. It is a co-investment in a person's career that lasts for 10 years. Music. What she has already done is unbelievable to them. They are buying a place at the table for all that lies ahead. The amount of secrecy surrounding the conversations was extraordinary, even by the standards of high-end luxury deals. Music. Instead of using the traditional direct agency channels, which would have quickly informed other businesses that anything significant was happening, the first contact seems to have taken place via middlemen. Meeting locations were impartial. Non-disclosure agreements applied to all participants, even those inside the brand's own organization. Less than 12 organizational authorities seem to have known about the discussions throughout their most limited stage. Music. The level of operational discipline required to keep something this significant under wraps says loudly about how seriously the brand took the decision in a field where information leaks are frequent. When it finally came to light, first via a leak to a sports business reporter and then officially confirmed within hours, the response was immediate and enormous. Alex gained almost 4 million social media followers across many platforms in only 48 hours. Music. The brand's own engagement metrics reportedly hit unprecedented heights. Music. The announcement went viral throughout the Philippines for 3 days in a row. From a purely commercial perspective, an 18-year-old from Manila has recently become one of the sport's most valuable players. Music. Now, let us talk about the aftermath, as that is when things become very tough and the tennis world cannot agree on anything. Reports state that Sabalenka's closest connections, including her advisors, agents, and the professionals who had spent years building her commercial career, were music furious. Not silently dissatisfied. Furious. And when you look at it from their perspective, the rage makes sense. Losing a major luxury brand renewal to another well-known winner would have been disappointing, but it would have made sense from a business perspective. Music. Losing to a young player who has only made a few Grand Slam appearances, has not yet won any major titles, and whose reputation was mostly unknown in Western markets stings in a totally different way. It is not merely a business decision. It feels like a statement. Sources claim that Sabalenka's management circle was very frustrated for weeks. Music. Discussions on whether legal counsel was required and if any existing contractual terms or exclusivity clauses had been handled improperly throughout the non-renewal process seem to have taken place. Nothing formal came of it, Music, but the mood inside that circle stayed elevated long after the first remark vanished from the press. The divides in the tennis world as a whole were not all that surprising when you laid them out. The majority of Sabalenka's fans were seasoned sportsmen, former champions, and the more prominent personalities in the sports media. Their point is worth taking into consideration rather than brushing it off as defensive. If consistent noteworthy victories at the top of the world rankings cannot guarantee premium brand loyalty, what is athletic brilliance really worth to the corporate organizations that profit from it? That real problem, which has frightening implications, has no obvious remedy. However, responses to Alex's signing were very different among younger athletes, coaches in developing markets, and athletes from regions that luxury brands had mostly overlooked for decades. For many years, Southeast Asian tennis produced highly motivated, technically skilled players who gained genuine local fan bases while going mostly undetected by the international marketing machinery. Music. Alex's contract was seen by that community as proof that the distribution of economic power was finally starting to shift. Both points of view are accurate. In actuality, neither one really expresses everything. Music. And throughout it all, there are disagreements on what sports marketing should prioritize based on conflicting statistics, industry remarks, and social media posts. At 18, Alex had to deal with a degree of global attention that athletes twice her age and experience would find challenging. Usually, the volume drowns out that part. The primary character of this story is still a teenage girl who, not so long ago, was just a little youngster from Manila with a racket and the determination to go to Spain and eventually a Grand Slam main draw. She now presents a $300 million commercial potential. The weight of your Instagram following is real, regardless of how many you have. However, music is what matters most, the part that is hidden by online arguments and personal allegiances. Music. A significant result about the actual usage of sports marketing revenues in the second half of this decade emerges when you exclude all of that and concentrate just on the financial justification for this decision, music. Southeast Asia is home to more than 700 million people. The fastest-growing consumer segment within that cohort consists of adults between the ages of 18 and 35 who have rising incomes and a strong desire for upscale goods. Luxury consumption grew across the region in the early 2020s at rates that made traditional Western markets seem slow in comparison, and it is projected that this trend will continue to accelerate until 2030. A number of Southeast Asian countries have seen a notable increase in the popularity of tennis, partly as a result of government support for sports, and partly as a result of the emergence of local players who transform the sport from something foreign and remote into something personal and culturally meaningful. When a young Filipino wins a Grand Slam major event, millions of fans in Manila are doing more than just watching tennis. They are discovering that they belong in that conversation. In an effort to intentionally induce that psychological shift from a passive spectator to an emotionally invested participant, luxury businesses have spent decades and enormous amounts of money. For Alex, the Swiss music firm did not create it. When they saw it was already there, they decided to stand beside it. Beyond the demographics, the arrangement reflects a broader trend in high-end sports collaborations. A deliberate preference for emerging stories over well-known ones. Sabalenka's career has been amazing. It is certain that she has already written her most dramatic chapters. The titles have documentation. Music. The records are part of the history books. She is a well-known figure in the business world. Even while it is amazing, it offers a brand something quite different from an athlete whose journey is obviously still ongoing. Music. For a company dedicated to an 8 to 10-year commitment, the opportunity to grow with someone and be there for the moments that have not yet happened offers a kind of strategic value that cannot be replicated by inheriting an athlete's existing legacy. Music. It is possible that the top-ranked athlete is not the most marketable. It may be the roof that is still rising and that no one can see completely just yet. The idea is unnerving. Even while it contradicts what most people naturally assume about the relationship between success and reward, it seems to be altering the way the most deliberate luxury companies make investment decisions. Sabalenka's legacy will endure forever. Music, boardroom choices have no bearing on what she created on those courts and what she proved was achievable. She owns all of that. But Alex's story is far from over. Additionally, one of the most precise and astute music companies in the world just made a $300 million investment based on the notion that an incomplete story is more valuable than a finished one. Music. Time will tell whether it turns out to be a wise decision or an expensive mistake. One thing is known at the moment: the regulations have changed. At the center of it all is an 18-year-old Manila girl whose music best tennis is still somewhere ahead of her. Professional sports today measure economic worth differently than they did a year ago. Share your thoughts in a comment. Was this the right choice, or did the business community just commit the biggest error in tennis sponsorship history? If you are seeking for a story like this, subscribe to Music. The biggest events in professional sports hardly ever receive the center stage. Still, we find them.